I think we have been, and I say we being the Syracuse football family and Syracuse University, have been really blessed to have the experience of Coach Mack and have the experience of a guy of his character, integrity, and his love of young men playing the game of football. And I can say that personally, that came through in everything he did, not just as football players, but as young men developing. And it's just a really humbling experience to have been able to call him coach, as I think so many people in this town know him as coach. But to be able to honor him tomorrow, I think is going to be a really special moment for a lot of people. And I can say it personally, but I know that he belongs to Syracuse University, and his community.
Questions for Don?
When a weekend like this comes around, how many memories comes back to you, kind of come flooding in as you remember those days?
Yeah, I was going through boxes the other night looking for old pictures of Coach and just trying to find some of he and I together, and then you just come across the games that we played, the experiences that we had, the ups and the downs, and it comes back in an instant, and how much you remember those moments when he challenged us to get better. There was that one game we played against Rutgers and we lost at home in '86, and we came into this building and I think he held 2 meetings, each lasted about 2.5 hours, one with the defense, one with the offense, and I think in those 2 meetings he probably went over, I know in the offensive meeting he only went over about 8 plays in 2.5 hours, and even though he was head coach, you're right, he went back to being teacher. And you just remember those moments when sometimes as a head coach he had to put down that head coach title and go back to being a teacher, and those were always, to me, the most fun moments, because that's when you saw what kind of coach he was.
Don, when you look at some of those things that he's taught you, life lessons, not just on the football field, what are some that stay close to mind for you?
He used to have an expression when somebody was down that we should love them up, when somebody gets hurt, when somebody's a little wounded, and I think probably more than anything else, I think he taught us, and I can say personally again, because it does become a very personal thing when you think back on the impact that he's had in your life, is he's taught us to not just appreciate the opportunity that we have to play this game, but the obligation you have to share it, and to share it, and the obligation that we have to other people. And he went to church every day, and he always talked about things that happened in church. He always talked about his faith, but more importantly, he always talked about taking care of other people. And I think as a player, when you're 18, 19 years old, you don't exactly get that. You don't get when he's bringing folks around into the locker room or around the facility or to practice, that he's doing that for them. He's doing that for those folks to give them an opportunity to be around a bunch of young guys who are enthusiastic about playing the game. And then when you leave and you sort of mature, you understand that so much of what he did was for other people. And I think that's, to me, the greatest lesson that I got from him was how fortunate we are to be able to play this game, but then that obligation that we have to serve other people.
You mentioned the Rutgers game. Is there any other specific game or specific moment that kind of stands out with Coach?
I've been thinking about that, about a specific moment, and it's hard to say that there was a specific moment. I remember the night before we played West Virginia at the end of the '86 season, which was a losing season for us. He talked about how good we were going to be next year, and this was a one-on-one conversation we had. And what the things he wanted me to do as a quarterback in that West Virginia game, that last game, looking forward to the 1987 season. And I think that's probably the one of those moments that kind of sticks out. Because with him, it always felt like it was a process, and that's one of the things I love about sports, is that it's a process. And with him, it was never, it was never do or die. It was never this is the end. It was always the next one. And so there really was no one moment or no one game that really sticks out as much as it was the consistency of how he was. And I remember him probably more because, again, in games you deal with the coordinators and assistant coaches. I remember him more about the things he did off the field. When a guy got in trouble, Coach Mack never turned his back on one of his guys, and he was always there to support you, whatever that was. I don't mean just getting in trouble, but whether it was having trouble in school, or having trouble at home, or whatever it was, he was always there to support the guys, and I always always appreciated, and it wasn't always appreciated. And you know, he and I butted heads a little bit early on in my career, and he never, you know, he never gave up on me because I was a stubborn punk from Long Island, right? He kept pushing and pushing, and he believed in where we were going, and so that much I remember. I remember, you know, when guys had difficult times, he was always there.
What drew you to him and got you up here? Like, what was there something in particular that made you want to come play for him?
You know what? I think, well, there was one big thing when I was in high school and was being recruited. As I always tell people, I was a black quarterback. I wasn't a quarterback. I was a black quarterback. And he made a joke about it. You know, he said, I don't care if you're green, if you're yellow, if you're blue, if you can play, you're gonna play. And that was all I needed to hear. And there was a sincerity in how he said that. He was a great salesman. But when it came to football, he didn't sugarcoat anything. And of course, he had come from the NFL, where it was a little different deal in how you talk to about the game. But I think the other thing about that, why I came here, and his influence, were his assistants. And if you look at the assistant coaches, many of whom now are in the NFL, they're still coaching, they're head coaches in other places, and they're all still out there coaching. And he had assembled what felt like family. And you just think about, you know, Clarence Brooks and Ivan Spears and Randy Edsel, George O'Leary, and you know, all those guys that were around that, and of course Bill Maxwell, who was my coach, and you know, it felt like family, and that is really an indication of leadership, and that's what he did, and all of his values were family-oriented values, in terms of how he ran the program, how he talked to all of us as young men, and like I said, when you're 18 years old, you have a dad at home, right? And he was your dad here, and he certainly lived up to that, you know, to that sort of that style of coaching. Very much a father figure, and sometimes, like I said, it wasn't always appreciated, but years later you go, I'm glad he was that guy.
The McPherson family is so respected here in Syracuse still.
Yeah.
They kind of made roots here.
Yep.
What do you remember about how the community, you know, appreciated him, and how, you know, the fans, you know, reacted to him?
Well, I will say this, because I have a video that I love to watch, probably more than I should admit, of he and I, sort of the years that we were together. And there was a time when the fans who were here wanted to get rid of him, and they didn't like him, and they were down on him. And he never, you know, one of the things he did in that time, is that he buffered that from us as players. We never saw that. In fact, I never saw that piece of how much the fans didn't like him in the '85-'86 season until years later, because he was good at keeping that sort of stuff out of this building. But it's always been. You know, I joke, like Madonna, you have this single name, right? He's coach, and he's coach in Syracuse, and quite frankly, the way that people love him here, he's loved like that in the circle of college football. He's loved like that around the country, and he's loved like that around the country because of the way he's loved like that here, and people see how much he cares about the community, how much he was involved in the community, how he ran a clean program, and you guys loved him, and he never sugarcoated. He always gave it like he saw it, and whether it was good or bad, he always put it on his shoulders, and everyone respected that. And so when things turned around, and he didn't walk around like, look what I did. When things turned around, he actually went in the opposite direction. He says, I'm just happy to be here. I'm just happy to be amongst these group of guys who finally figured out how to play football. And so, isn't that I'm right? I mean, he was just really just happy to be along the ride. And I think the fans here, and I can't even say the fans, because I don't think you had to be a football fan to love Coach Mack. I think you just had to be a person of this community in the city to recognize that we had a special guy here who had great values and turned what was a struggling, mediocre program into a national power. And I think there was a great appreciation for not just the fact that he did that and gave us great football to watch, but the way he did it, and bringing quality young men to the community. I think that was another big thing about what he did.
Now, when you look at the fact that the coach did take those opportunities on local kids and just in New York in general, what can you say about his reach to the community and having people represent on this team that were from the area?
That was one of the most important things to him. I mean, as I said, he never looked at, I think, any one thing in a vacuum. It was always, you recruit kids from Long Island, they do well, they play and play well, you get to recruit more kids from Long Island. And so he was, and I think he passed that down. I think he passed that down to Coach Pasqualoni very well, and taught those guys how to engage the community. And Coach, and he did that very well. And I think that guys like Robert Drummond and the guys who were local here, Hank Fornari in Liverpool, guys who obviously Scott Schwades and the guys who are from here. We've lost some really good football players out of Syracuse in the years since. And I think to your point, you keep talent local. College football is a regional game. It's not a national game. And I think when you keep talent local and you nurture talent, you start to get the local high schools running your system and doing the things that you do on the college level. And so you actually start recruiting just by staying local, if that makes sense. And that's one thing he did very, very well. And again, I go back to his staff. Most of the guys that were on that staff were New England natives, or Long Island, New York. George O'Leary, Long Island guy, and but most of the other guys on that staff were New England, and we did very well in recruiting in New England. We beat out Boston College and other Northeast schools. We would dominate New England and get the best players out of New England from Long Island, Northern Jersey, and that, as I said before, was a big byproduct of the staff that he had.
Don, for everybody here, have you thought about how you're going to feel tomorrow? What's going to be going through your head as you walk out on that field?
Having had that moment twice with the Hall of Fame and the jersey, that moment always felt surreal for me, because football is being that team game. But he deserves this. I don't think I'm biased, and I know we've had some great players and coaches to come through these halls over the last many years. But he's a really special man, and he's been a really special man to this university and this community. And this is, he really deserves this. And so, not many people, you sort of forget, he's always in that building for football games, whether he's calling games or he's in there, and he has been for all these many years. And as a fan, as a grandfather, as a proud family member of an Orangeman playing the game, he's always been there. And this is, to me, I'm trying not to get, and you know me, Sue, I'm trying not to get emotional about it, but he deserves this. And I had a chance to visit with him a little while ago, and he doesn't talk about, he talks about that we were good and that we were a good football team, because we were. But more importantly, he talks about the connection that he and we had to this community, and so it's going to be really gratifying to see him get his moment.
Thank you, Connor.